All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to True Crime Loser. I hope you're doing well today. I have a horrible head cold, so that's always fun. But today, we're going to kind of bounce around. First, I'm going to talk about Megan Fieramusca's arrest affidavit that came out yesterday. She's Heidi Bouchard's best friend that looks like murdered her and took her baby. I'll be there for you when the baby is born. All right, so some of the questions that this arrest affidavit that came out yesterday answer. The first tip that got them looking at Megan Fieramusca, the world's worst best friend, was a tip that was called in from someone at the apartment complex. I don't know why when this case first started and got going, before they had said they lived in an apartment complex, I was picturing a house. I think that I just picture houses in Austin. But they lived at an apartment complex, which once I heard that, I was like, oh, that's good for trying to solve it, because there's a lot more people around, and also there could be cameras. So there was a person that saw Heidi and another woman walk out and get in a car with a baby, and then the police showed the woman that called in the tip a photo lineup, and she picked out Megan Fieramusca in the lineup, and so that got them on Megan's tail, I guess. Then they checked Megan's phone, and it was in the area. Megan Googled Heidi Bouchard 162 times, which looks bad once that you know that Heidi's body was in the trunk of her car and that she stole the baby. But if that wasn't the case, you might sit there and Google your missing best friend. I'll be there for you. She also Googled bodies found in Texas a bunch of times, which is a little strange because the body was in a car in front of her house. So it seems like there was at least an attempt at an elaborate plan for the whole thing, right? Like she was doing things way before to point everybody towards Shane, Heidi's husband or fiance. And the plan seemed pretty flushed out until the end, where the body just never was just in the trunk of the car. So I keep thinking maybe the plan just fell apart. To me, it feels like she worked with somebody, and maybe the plan was, okay, we'll do this, and then we'll take the body out to the woods or whatever it is. And then once everything was going, maybe it just all went to shit. Maybe her and the other person got into a fight, or maybe it felt like there was too many police around once the news story went worldwide or whatever, and they were like, we can't go out to the woods now. Just leave her in the trunk for now. Or maybe she just is totally nuts and a little stupid. She might be a little bit stupid. I don't know. But so she was searching bodies found in Texas, and then the investigators end up talking to the person that owns the house, which dated Megan Fieramusca. They had dated for a while, and Megan even said that she was pregnant with possibly his baby, and so that guy is probably just like, oh, God. I knocked up Fieramusca. Damn it. And but he said that he had never seen her bare stomach during the pregnancy. And then they showed the homeowner, a picture of Heidi and the baby, and he goes, that's the baby that I saw in the house. I guess Megan had left and then had come back with the baby, and it was playing it off like she had this baby, and she had told when she had got back and she had showed the landlord, possible baby daddy, the baby, she goes, don't be mad. And then the police showed the homeowner pictures, and probably he was pretty happy to say, oh my God, that baby is not mine. I didn't knock up Fieramusca. Cheers! So he was like, yeah, that's the baby in my house that old Fieramusca was saying could possibly be mine. And she was, we already knew this, Heidi was strangled, but I think that means that there was probably someone else involved. It's not easy just to go one-on-one and strangle someone. I think they're probably similar sizes too. And it's not easy. It's not like the movies where it takes 2 minutes and then you're good. It's like the Liam McAtasey, he had a lot of weight on, he just killed his best friend. Cool, bro. But McAtasey had a lot of weight, and it took a half an hour, and old Chrissy Poo Watts is much stronger than Bella and Cece, and he just failed. They came walking in the room. And so it's hard for me to think it was just Megan and that no one's been charged with the murder yet. So I think they think that too. Hopefully it'll come out soon. And then a Texas Ranger found Fieramusca out, I think at the grocery store or something. They were tailing her, and then once she was out in public, one interviewed her, and she said that she had given birth on December 12th at a birthing center. A center for birthing. What is this? A center for birthing? So she said she gave birth at a birthing center. And the Texas Ranger was like, which one? And she, I think, wasn't expecting to answer those questions and just was like, I can't remember. And I think they probably asked her questions something like, well, who was in there? Can anyone verify any of what you're saying? And she goes, no, I gave birth alone. Which, if that's the case, you got to give that birthing center a very low Yelp review. Can you imagine you go to give birth to your child at a birthing center, and they don't have one person to help you? You're just in a room alone. Like, I could have done this at my house in the bathroom. And I guess the last thing that was pretty interesting about the arrest affidavit is that she had a key to the Bouchard house, and they had said to, hey, give it back or leave the key when you leave or something. And Shane said that he never got that key back. So she had a key to their place. She was at the birth, Margot's birth. She had this whole hoax plan to pin it on Shane, at least in my opinion. I don't know. What a nightmare of a woman. Her mugshot, too. Her eyes, she's got the crazy eyes. Her eyes make Stephanie Lazarus look warm and inviting. She's just like, this blank, nutso look on her face. She's due in court February 3rd. She was due in court last week on Thursday, and then it was pushed back, which I think makes sense. And, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to keep on following this one. I want to say I'm moving. These episodes are going to be all over the place because my life is a little bit all over the place. I'm moving, it looks like in a month. Like a month from today, actually. The people that are living in the apartment we're moving into now are scheduled to move out as long as everything goes good February 1st, and then the landlord said he needs a week or two to clean and paint and stuff. So February 7th or February 14th, we'll be moving. And so with a nice, horrible head cold and the time ticking, we got to pack up everything in this apartment. Should be great. Should be fun. All right, I'm going to tell you guys a story that I've been thinking about it a lot. So I have this friend. I don't know why I have this friend, and he is, I think 46, 47 years old, so a little bit older than me, and or a bit older than me. But years ago, his friend got hepatitis C from sharing heroin needles. His friend was a horrible heroin addict and had eventually cleaned himself up, but it was too late. He had hepatitis C, and at the time, there was no cure. And so it was just a terminal diagnosis. Now, I think it's 6 shots or something, and you're good to go back out there into the world. But at this time, there wasn't a cure yet, and I always think, like, that's not. There had to have been someone that died from hepatitis C, like, in the morning, and then they announced they had a cure in the afternoon. Like, who was the last person to? And I never met this guy. This whole story was told to me by my friend. And so my friend says, he did the slow process of dying from hepatitis C, totally awful. And as he is dying, he asked my friend to look out for his brother Bert after he died. And Bert, I think, has schizophrenia or something awful in that same world. And the first sign that something was wrong with Bert was in college. All of a sudden, they live in New York City. All of a sudden, Bert drove in a manic, nuts state from New York to California. And then he got to California and realized that he's totally helpless and had no business driving to California by himself. And so rang up his parents in New York and said, I drove to California and I need help. And so they said, okay, well, you got to drive back. So he drove back to California. And when they drove back, he saw some doctors, and the mom never really came to terms with the fact that her son had severe mental issues. And so they did the whole thing, and the dad is a admitted workaholic that did not give his kids or the wife as much time as he wished he would have, I guess. And he was a predominant builder here in New York City. And I think what's the nightclub like? I don't know, some big nightclub that has been famous through the years. He built that. He built a bunch of buildings here in New York City. He ended up owning a bunch of buildings in the city. So he's a workaholic and made tons of money. Fortune after fortune after fortune. But I think his family life suffered a lot because of it. And, the oldest son, I guess, died of hepatitis C from heroin, and the youngest son, who has health problems, or I guess maybe Bert could be the older son, but one of the son has major mental problems. The other one was a heroin addict. And so let's fast forward like 40 years from the whole college thing. And now the mom is dead. She died last year at 96 years old. And the dad, the workaholic, builder, great dude, but just worked all the time, is at this point pretty much a vegetable, doesn't talk much anymore, and has Alzheimer's. Again, the mom never accepted the fact that Alzheimer's diagnosis. It got to the point where he couldn't talk, and she would just go, it's just a little dementia. So that just shows you when things like that are happening to loved ones, you really can just not accept it. Just, nope, he does not have Alzheimer's. It's a little dementia. It just, sometimes I think that news is too hard to handle for people. And I met the older couple a few times before she died, and they were both in their 90s, and they were so old that before he quit talking totally, he would have like a few stories that he told just over and over again, because it was like a goldfish. He would tell his story, and then he would forget, and just that's all he's got. He's just got one story at this point. So then he would tell the one story again, and so how it would work when they were hanging out, they're both in their 90s, and she has a couple stories, and he has like one story. So he would tell his one story, and then she would tell her, one of a couple stories, and then he would tell his story again, and then she would tell the other story, the one that she didn't tell, and then he would tell his one story again, and then by about the third time, it would click for her that she had just heard the story, but it would take like three or four. It would click for her, and then she would scold him for repeating himself. She would say, "Sydney, you're repeating yourself," even though that's all he's got. He only has one story. And then he would go, "Sorry." And he had all these little lines, my friend told me, that he would use to get through awkward situations with his Alzheimer's. So he would just go, "Sorry, I'm stupid." And then she would go, "You're not stupid. Stop saying you're stupid." And then they would sit there for a second. Both their minds would go blank, and then the whole thing would start over with their one story. And it's just is sad. And my friend, the one that told me this whole story, kept his word and looked after Bert, the schizophrenic brother, and even the parents, took the mom to doctor's appointments, and even a little of stuff as they would call my friend and say, "The TV's broken," and he would go from where he lives in Queens all the way to Manhattan, and there they have this great apartment. I'm talking, they are rich, and they have this great apartment, and it was remodeled in the 70s and hasn't been touched since then. So it's this time capsule to the 70s. You go in there and it looks like it's about to be like a great 70s party, and then you just see they're in their 90s, and there's home health aides buzzing around and everything. Luckily they had enough money to just stay in their own. But anyway, so my friend did everything he could to keep his word to his friend, as his friend was dying from hepatitis C from a heroin needle issue. And the keeping his eye on Bert, a lot of that is just Bert. So now Bert's in his 60s, the schizophrenic brother, and his whole life, or a lot of his life, he's lived in this 4-story dingy brick building in Queens that's an assisted living home. And they rent, so he plenty of money for this assisted living home, and then they rented out an apartment a few blocks away where he quote unquote works. And because again, his parents didn't want to believe that he had schizophrenia, and they also just wanted him to live a normal life, I think, even if they did believe it. And so they rented out an apartment a few blocks away. So what Bert has done for years and years and years is gets up in the assisted living home and then goes to work, and he goes to the apartment and sits in the apartment all day, and watches TV. And then he goes back to the assisted living home. If anyone asks him at the assisted living home, he goes to work every day. It's his job. And what Bert's condition looks like is if they take him out, so he gets brutally lonely, as you can imagine, just sitting in the assisted living home. He watches the Mets. He wears a Mets hat, and he watches the Mets, and he watches the news, but basically just sits in this little apartment, and just the TV keeps him company. And my friend that's telling me the story, and other people, if you try to take him out, so say my friend, he loves the Mets, watches all the games, sits there with the hat on. So my friend that was friends with his brother, this is years ago, was like, "You know what, Bert, I'm taking you to a Mets game. The Mets, who you love, play in Queens. You live in Queens. We're going to go to the Mets game. We're going to get hot dogs. You're going to see the green grass. We're going to watch them play. It's no big deal. And then we're going to, I'll bring you home." And so he tries to do fun stuff because he just sits in this dingy brick building in Queens and is lonely. And so on the big day, he had never seen his beloved Mets play before. On the big day, he picks him up. He's got his hat. They got peanuts. They drive to the stadium. They park. They go in and they sit down. And this is what, so sad. This is what taking him out looks like. So he sits down, the green grass, everything looks great. And he leans over to my friend and goes, everybody's looking at me. And that's what he always says. If you go to the restaurant, if you go to anything, he goes, everybody's looking at me. So my friend, trying to just keep everything, he's like, nah, Bert, no one's looking at us. Everyone's just here. And even if they are looking at us, fuck them. Who cares? Let's just enjoy the game. Let them look. And he goes, no, everybody's looking at me. Everybody. And if you try to argue with him more than about what my friend did, just being like, who cares? Let's just, yeah, we're fine. The game hasn't even started yet. What Bert does is he'll lean back and he'll go, call an ambulance. And almost sort of like pathetically fake a heart attack type situation, but he just goes, call an ambulance, which now my girlfriend used that line. Like I say, we're at some barbecue or party or something and I want to leave. I'll just go, call an ambulance. So he'll just lean back and go and say, call an ambulance. And there's not much of a point to argue with him behind that. So, my friend is like, no one's looking at us. Everything's good. Let's get a hot dog. The Mets are about to come out and play. We're here. We're out. We've done it. Let's watch the game. And he says, nope, call an ambulance. And it's just one of those situations where my friend was like, okay, let's go. And before the Mets even came out and he saw one batter or anything, they were walking out of the stadium back in the car, and then he takes that really hard. So all the way on the way back to the dingy brick building where he lives, he's going, what's wrong with me? And then the only thing to do in that point is my friend just tries to keep him, don't worry about it. Hey, you weren't feeling good? We'll catch him another time. Don't worry about it. He doesn't want him to feel bad about himself. And then another story that I've always thought was interesting was, so the dad made so much money and to this day owns all these buildings. So, accountants and estate managers or whoever does that type of stuff, his properties and stuff make well over $1 million a year, even though he's a vegetable with Alzheimer's. And so all of this money is going to Bert. And so Bert's checking account, his like Wells Fargo checking account, just normal, has, I think, north of $10 million in it. And when the dad, who is upper 90s, can't talk or really move at this point, when he finally does die, just a fortune is going to be transferred to Bert. And the crazy part about that is Bert really can't even fathom, to the point where when they go out, Bert will pay for lunch or something, and just with the family's money, and like they'll go to a diner, my friend and Bert, and the bill will come and it's $36, and Bert will be like, do we have enough? Like, he's always worried. He has no idea that this fortune is, and which is scary because he's very vulnerable, and the people, he's very vulnerable. If a nurse or a night nurse or like a Grant Amato type person knew that, he could come to Bert and be like, Bert, the CIA called. They were asking about you. We need, this is serious. We need to transfer a little bit of money, and, you need to help me with this. Like, he would go, okay, he would believe it. And the fascinating part of this story is everybody is getting old. He was the kid and he's in his 60s. And as more people are dying off that have protected Bert and insulated Bert, it just gets scarier. And, there's accountants and lawyers and everything looking out for it. But you never really think about that. The kid that's about to inherit the whole fortune, and his mind is just has no ability to comprehend what that is, what I should do with it. And I know for a fact that everyone involved is nervous. He also, another thing Bert did, he drove, which is horrifying thought that he ever had a license. But he would drive for a while. He would drive, do his work, and I think a year or two ago, maybe at this point, he hit a pregnant lady. Luckily, she was fine. The baby was fine, or everything. But like the people that look out for him, yanked his driver. It was like, you can't drive anymore. Took his driver's license away, which made Bert really mad. I can still drive and everything. And they're like, no. And so the pregnant lady is suing, and my friend said she'll probably get north of $1 million. And so poor lonely Bert, probably right as I'm telling you this, he's sitting in the small dingy building in Queens, probably watching the news. And everybody that loves him and that helps him is growing older, and it's a scary thought that he's so vulnerable with all that money. But I don't know. I thought about that story a lot over Christmas break. I don't know why, but I thought I'd tell you guys. Where am I at? 26. All right. I think I'm going to cut it off there. I feel horrible. I hope you guys are having a good week. I think I might do for this channel. I think I had never watched it, and a few people had recommended it. And last night I was kind of trying to figure out something to get fascinated by to go over for this channel. And I think I'm going to go through the apostle, I think it's just a pastor, Apostle David Taylor's deposition. This guy was one of those church guys that just was spending the church's money in all these insane ways, and he had to do a deposition, and it's pretty funny and interesting. So I think I'm going to do that. But yeah, I'm going to cut it off there. Hope you guys are doing well. I'll see you next time. Why, Steven, why? Last question.